He was born on the 6th of June, 1992, in Mogadishu. He grew up in a country that has seen more hardship than most people on this planet could even imagine. He didn't choose football as a player. He chose it as an official, the person whose authority on the pitch is the invisible backbone of every single match. He climbed through local football in Somalia. He earned a spot on the FIFA international list in 2018. In January of 2024, he became the first Somali referee in history to officiate at an Africa Cup of Nations. In the 2025 to 2026 season, he refereed the second leg of the CAF Champions League final, the first Somali ever to lead a continental final. He was selected to referee the third-place playoff at the Under-20 World Cup in Chile. In 2025, he was named CAF Men's Referee of the Year, the best official on an entire continent. And in early 2026, FIFA referee chief Pierluigi Collina selected him from a global pool of candidates as one of just 52 officials trusted with matches at the 2026 World Cup, the first Somali in history to receive that call. His name is Omar Artan. He is 33 years old, and on the 6th of June, he arrived at Miami International Airport with a valid visa, his FIFA accreditation, and every single piece of documentation required to walk through those doors and take his place at the biggest football tournament on earth. He was held for 11 hours. The questions focused heavily on Al-Shabaab, the militant organization operating in parts of Somalia that has no connection whatsoever to Omar Artan, his career, his travel, or anything else in his life. He was placed in a holding cell. He was declared inadmissible. No specific explanation was given. He was put on a flight to Istanbul and then flew home to Mogadishu with nothing to show for everything he had built, except a dignity that no one in that airport corridor could take from him. What happened next is what this story is really about. Because while FIFA issued a carefully worded institutional statement, while the governing body's president made a joke about hot dogs at a press conference and told critics to chill and relax, while the organization that had selected Artan and then failed to protect his ability to actually show up was busy redirecting responsibility to host country immigration processes. Something completely different was happening in Canada, in British Columbia, in Toronto, in the offices of politicians who had nothing to gain by speaking up, but who understood exactly what the moment required. And what they said, the specific words, the specific actions, deserves to be heard in full. Because in the context of everything swirling around this tournament, it is the clearest demonstration yet of the difference between an institution that claims to believe in football's values and a country that actually shows it. Let's go through the full facts first, because they need to be said completely every single time this story is told. Omar Artan has been a FIFA-listed referee since 2018. In January 2024, he became the first Somali official at an Africa Cup of Nations. In the 2025 to 2026 season, he refereed the second leg of the CAF Champions League final, the first Somali ever to lead a continental final at that level. He was named CAF Men's Referee of the Year for 2025, the best official on a continent that covers over 50 national football federations. FIFA selected him as one of 52 referees for the 2026 World Cup, the first Somali in history to get that call. He had a valid visa. The Somali embassy confirmed it. He had his FIFA accreditation and every required document. He was detained for 11 hours at Miami Airport. He was questioned about Al-Shabaab, a militant group active in parts of Somalia that has no documented connection to him in any way. He was placed in a holding cell. He was declared inadmissible. He was put on a plane. He did not referee a single match at the 2026 World Cup. The Trump administration, through a State Department spokesperson, told the AFP news agency that Artan had been denied entry because he was associated with, and this is the official language, suspected members of terrorist organizations. No charges, no evidence presented publicly. Suspected. That word carries enormous weight when it results in a man being deported from a country he had every legal right to enter. U.S. Customs and Border Protection issued a brief statement of their own. They said Artan underwent additional inspection, described as a routine part of their process, and that following that inspection, He was determined to be inadmissible due to vetting concerns. That's the full explanation from the agency that turned him away. Vetting concerns, no specifics, no appeal mechanism offered, no acknowledgement of his FIFA credentials or the career those credentials represent. This is not happening in a vacuum. Trump's immigration crackdown has cast a shadow over this World Cup since before a single match was played. Currently, 39 countries are under either a full or partial travel ban from the United States. For 19 of those countries, the State Department has halted all visa issuances entirely. Earlier this year, the administration placed restrictions on nationals from 19 countries, mostly in Africa and the Middle East, with a broad travel ban. Iran, which qualified for the tournament, is on that list. While there is an exemption for World Cup athletes, coaches, and their immediate families, that exemption does not extend to extended family, friends, or fans who simply want to travel to the U.S. for the games. FIFA, aware of the collision course it was on, had reportedly been in discussions about asking Trump for a moratorium on immigration enforcement actions during the tournament. Those discussions, whatever their outcome, did not prevent what happened to Artan. FIFA's response to the situation was precise in its language and devastating in its practical meaning. The governing body confirmed that Artan would be unable to train and officiate at the tournament after being denied entry to the United States. It confirmed that FIFA is not involved in host country immigration processes. It confirmed that a host government ultimately determines who receives a visa and who is admitted. It said his status would not be changed. And then it announced one of the few genuinely meaningful decisions it made in the entire episode. Artan would receive his full tournament fee, every dollar, every bonus payment, the same full compensation package as every other World Cup official, despite not having refereed a single match. That financial decision matters more than it might seem. It is a formal, institutionally recognized acknowledgement that what happened was wrong, even if the language around it never says so directly. When you pay someone for work they were prevented from doing, because of circumstances beyond their control, you are making a statement. FIFA made that statement with money because it was apparently unwilling to make it with words. And then, Gianni Infantino appeared before reporters. When pressed on the situation, the FIFA president told critics to chill and relax. Earlier that same month, when the tournament's sky-high ticket prices generated a wave of the public outrage, secondary market listings for the final reaching $2 million, Infantino had joked that he would personally deliver a hot dog and a Coke to anyone who paid that price. Now, with one of his personally selected officials sitting in a holding cell at Miami International Airport, the institutional response was the same energy: chill and relax. The contrast between the gravity of what happened to Artan and the tone of the man running the institution that selected him has not been lost on anyone paying attention. And Canada noticed. David Eby is the Premier of British Columbia. He is the political leader of the province whose city of Vancouver is hosting 7 World Cup matches, including knockout round fixtures. BC Place Stadium in Vancouver is one of the 13 venues split between Canada and the United States for this tournament. Eby oversees the hosting operation in his province. He went on social media and wrote words that have now been read by millions of people around the world. He wrote that Omar Artan would be welcomed and celebrated in British Columbia for what he's overcome and where he is today. And then, in 4 words that cut through every institutional statement and diplomatic deflection of the preceding days, he wrote, "Let's have him referee in Vancouver. Let's have him referee in Vancouver." Not a press release, not a statement of concern, not a carefully formatted response from a communications office. A direct public invitation, written in plain English, from a political leader with the institutional authority to make it mean something. At a press briefing, Eby went further, saying that in British Columbia, Artan would be seen as gold, not garbage. That language was deliberate. It was not subtle. It was a direct response to the way the United States had treated a man FIFA had called one of its 52 best officials in the world. Olivia Chow is the mayor of Toronto. Her city is hosting 6 World Cup matches, including Canada's opening fixture against Bosnia and Herzegovina. She released a full formal statement. She said denying entry to Omar Artan, who had earned his place on the world stage through hard work and perseverance, was not right. She said Toronto believes in fairness, inclusion, and giving talent the opportunity to shine. She said he would be welcome to referee there. And then she took one more step. She committed to writing a formal letter to FIFA from the mayor of a World Cup host city, requesting that Artan be assigned to matches in her jurisdiction. That is a meaningful institutional action, not just a social media post. A letter from a head of local government to the sport's governing body asking, officially and in writing, for a specific official to be given a specific role. That kind of request doesn't come from a political playbook. It comes from someone who looked at the situation and decided that the right response was to do something, not just say something. Merritt Stiles, the leader of Ontario's official opposition, echoed both of them. She said Artan had earned his place on the world stage. With World Cup matches coming to Toronto, she said, let's make sure he is welcome to referee at the venue. 3 Canadian leaders, 3 separate statements, all published within hours of each other, all saying the same thing to the same institution. You had the right man. You couldn't protect him. We will. Here's where the story gets structurally interesting. Because the Canadian offers, as genuine and as meaningful as they were, ran immediately into an obstacle that reveals something very important about how FIFA designed this tournament. All 52 referees and 88 assistant referees at this World Cup are part of what FIFA calls Team 1, a single centralized officiating group managed from a training hub located in Miami, Florida. Officials are not assigned separately by country. They are not independently deployed to Canadian venues or Mexican venues. The system requires every single official to be physically present at the Miami hub, to go through the preparation program, the briefings, the assignments, and the security protocols before being sent to any match, anywhere in the tournament, not just U.S. matches, any match. Because Artan was denied entry to the United States, he cannot access the Miami hub. Because he cannot access the Miami hub, he cannot be part of Team 1. And because he cannot be part of Team 1, he cannot referee in Vancouver, regardless of what David Eby invites or what Olivia Chow writes in her letter. That structural fact is a direct consequence of a choice FIFA made when designing this tournament. There was no compelling operational reason why the training hub for a 3-country tournament needed to be exclusively inside one of those 3 countries. The organizers could have built a system that allowed officials to prepare in any of the 3 host nations. They chose not to. And the consequence of that choice is that when one host country turned away a FIFA-selected official, the other 2 host countries, however sincerely they wanted to welcome him, had no path within the tournament's own framework to make that happen. This is not a minor administrative detail. It is a structural measurement of the gap between FIFA's stated commitment to the universality of this tournament and the organizational decisions it actually made. A World Cup hosted by 3 countries, with an officiating infrastructure entirely dependent on the immigration decisions of one of them. A referee selected from Somalia, sent home from Miami, welcomed by Canada, unable to reach Vancouver because the organization that selected him built the system in a way that makes flexibility impossible. The contrast with how European football responded makes that gap even harder to ignore. UEFA understood what the moment required. Within hours of Artan landing in Mogadishu, the governing body of European football announced his appointment to the 2026 UEFA Super Cup final. Paris Saint-Germain versus Aston Villa in Salzburg, Austria on the 12th of August. He will become the first non-European referee in history to officiate a major UEFA final, the first African referee ever to lead a match of that significance in the European competition structure. UEFA's president Alexander Cheferin said, simply, that football is made to connect people. The CAF president thanked Cheferin personally, and by name in public, for giving Artan the stage that the World Cup had denied him. That response was not a bureaucratic process. It was a decision. UEFA saw what happened, assessed what was available, and moved within hours to give Artan something real, not a statement of solidarity, not an expression of concern, a match, a historic one that the World Cup itself, for all its size and prestige, can no longer offer him. When Artan landed in Mogadishu, thousands of people filled the stadium, not for a football match, but for him. The president of Somalia called him personally. His country wrapped him in their flag, and he said, with a composure that spoke more clearly than any press release, that what happened has happened, and it was fate. And he said quietly that he would attend the next one, God willing. Those words arrived in the same news cycle as Infantino's instruction to chill and relax. Both statements were heard. Both will be remembered. The contrast between them is the contrast between the institution that runs this tournament and the man it failed to protect. Think about the full sequence of institutional responses to what happened at Miami Airport on the 6th of June. The United States denied Artan entry and offered no specific public explanation beyond vetting concerns. FIFA said it was not involved in immigration decisions, confirmed he would receive his full fee, and told critics to relax. UEFA gave him the Super Cup, a historic appointment announced within hours. Canada invited him to Vancouver and committed to writing FIFA a formal letter. The CAF president thanked Europe by name in public, and the Somali public filled a stadium to welcome him home. 4 different entities, all with different relationships to the tournament, different kinds of power, different institutional languages, all arriving at the same assessment. What happened was not right. The one voice conspicuously absent from that assessment was the voice of the governing body that selected him. FIFA said it was not involved. It said the host government decides. It said his status would not change. And its president said people should chill and relax. The political dimension of this episode is impossible to separate from the football dimension. Omar Artan's story is not just a story about a referee being denied entry to a tournament. It is a story about what happens when the Trump administration's immigration policy, a policy that has placed 39 countries under travel restrictions and halted visa issuances for 19 of them, collides directly with the operation of a tournament that is simultaneously being presented to the world as a celebration of global unity. The contradiction between those two things was always going to produce a moment like this. The only question was, which individual would be unlucky enough to be at the center of it? Artan was that individual. He was not the first person to experience these barriers, and based on current policy directions, he is unlikely to be the last. There are larger questions here that will outlast the tournament itself. Questions about whether centralizing the entire officiating apparatus of a 3-country World Cup inside a single country's borders was ever a defensible decision. Questions about whether FIFA's contractual arrangements with the U.S. as a host country included any guarantees of access for credentialed officials. Questions about whether those arrangements, if they did exist, were enforced or simply accepted as inadequate. Questions about whether the FIFA leadership's response, paying Artan his fee while telling critics to relax, represents an institution that has calculated that saying nothing definitive is less costly than saying something meaningful. And questions about the future. The next World Cup, in 2030, is scheduled across Spain, Portugal, Morocco, and part of South America, with multiple host nations and potentially even more complex logistics. The one after that, in 2034, will be hosted by Saudi Arabia. Each of those configurations brings its own version of the same fundamental question. Who gets to decide, ultimately, whether the people FIFA selects to officiate its most important matches can actually get into the country where those matches are being played? Artan's answer to all of these questions, delivered from Mogadishu in front of the cameras and the crowds and the flag of his country, was the cleanest response available. He said it was fate. He said he would be at the next one, God willing. David Eby said, let's have him referee in Vancouver. Olivia Chow said she would write to FIFA. Marit Stiles said he earned his place on the world stage. UEFA said football is made to connect people. And thousands of people in Mogadishu, without a single word between them, said that what he built and what was taken from him were both real and that they saw it and they remembered. That is where this story stands right now, while the 2026 World Cup continues across stadiums in the United States, Canada, and Mexico. The matches are being played, the goals are being scored. The referees who made it through are on the pitch, making the decisions that Artan trained for years to make at this level. And somewhere in Mogadishu, a man who was named the best referee on an entire continent is watching the tournament he was selected for on a screen, waiting for August 12th in a stadium in Salzburg, where the institution that had the clarity to see what the moment required will hand him the whistle for a UEFA Super Cup final, and where he will become the first African referee in history to lead one. What this episode changes about how FIFA manages its officiating infrastructure at future tournaments remains genuinely uncertain. Whether the decision to centralize the training hub in one host country during a three-nation World Cup will be reviewed. Whether the framework for 2030 and 2034 will be built differently, in a way that doesn't make every official's participation contingent on the immigration decisions of a single government. Whether any of the political momentum generated by Canadian leaders, by UEFA's response, by the global coverage of this story, will translate into structural changes at FIFA, rather than simply being absorbed by the institutional machinery and forgotten. Artan said he will be at the next one. That is the kind of forward-looking statement that deserves to be taken seriously, because the man who made it has already demonstrated, through 8 years of work and one very long night in a holding cell at Miami International Airport, that when he says something, he means it.